My parents sold my car to bail out my brother's gambling debts. The problem? The car was still legally mine, and I had no idea they'd done it until I walked outside and found an empty driveway. What happened next turned my entire family upside down and taught me that sometimes the people you trust most are the ones who'll betray you without hesitation. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. 3 months ago, I thought I had the perfect family setup. My name is Lillian, I'm 24, and I was living in my childhood home in Denver while saving money for my own place. My parents, Robert and Maria Hernandez, had always been supportive, and my older brother Marcus seemed to finally have his life together after years of struggles. I'd been working as a graphic designer for almost 2 years, pulling in decent money and slowly building my savings. The biggest purchase I'd made was my 2019 Honda Civic. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. I'd saved every penny for the down payment, handled all the paperwork myself, and made every monthly payment on time. That car represented my independence, my hard work, and my future. Marcus had moved back home about 6 months earlier after losing his apartment. He claimed it was just temporary, that he was between jobs and needed to get back on his feet. My parents welcomed him with open arms, as they always did. Robert would constantly defend Marcus, saying he just needed time to figure things out, while Maria would cook his favorite meals and do his laundry like he was still 16. I'll admit, it bothered me. Here I was, paying rent to live in my childhood bedroom, contributing to groceries, helping with utilities, and being treated like a responsible adult. Meanwhile, Marcus lived rent-free, ate our food, used our Wi-Fi, and seemed to spend most of his days playing video games or hanging out with friends I'd never met. But I kept my mouth shut. Family harmony was important to my parents, especially my dad, who came from a traditional household where you never turned your back on blood. Maria would always say, "We stick together, mija. That's what families do." The first red flag should have been the phone calls. Marcus started getting calls at all hours. His phone would buzz constantly, and he'd step outside to answer them. When I asked him about it once, he got defensive and said it was just job interviews and networking. I wanted to believe him. The second red flag was his mood swings. Some days, Marcus would be upbeat, almost manic, talking about big plans and opportunities. Other days, he'd be withdrawn and irritable, snapping at anyone who tried to talk to him. My parents chalked it up to job search stress, but something felt off. The third red flag was the money situation. Marcus had supposedly been applying for jobs for months, but he always seemed to have cash for cigarettes, fast food, and gas for my dad's truck when he borrowed it. When I casually mentioned this to Maria, she said Robert had been helping him out with small amounts here and there. Just until he gets on his feet, she assured me. Everything came crashing down on a Tuesday morning in early October. I had an important client presentation that day, so I'd laid out my best outfit the night before and set my alarm extra early. I wanted to grab coffee on the way to work and review my notes one more time before the meeting. I walked outside at 7:30 a.m., keys in hand, ready to start my day. My parking spot was empty. At first, I thought maybe I was confused. Maybe I'd parked somewhere else the night before. I walked around the block, checking every possible spot. Nothing. My car was simply gone. Panic set in immediately. My first thought was that it had been stolen. I ran back inside, my heart pounding, and woke up my parents. "Mom, Dad, my car's been stolen. It's not in the driveway. It's not anywhere on the street. I need to call the police." The look that passed between my parents should have told me everything, but I was too frantic to notice. Robert cleared his throat and said, "Lillian, sit down. We need to talk." "No, Dad, I need to call the police right now. Every minute we wait makes it harder to find my car. I have insurance, but—" "Lillian?" Maria's voice was firm, the tone she used when she was about to deliver bad news. "Your car wasn't stolen." I stared at them, confusion replacing panic. "What do you mean it wasn't stolen? It's gone. Someone took it." Robert rubbed his face with both hands, a gesture I recognized from childhood when he was trying to explain something difficult. We had to sell it." The words didn't compute at first. "You had to sell what?" Your car, Maria said quietly. We sold your car. The room started spinning. You sold my car? How could you sell my car? It's mine. I paid for it. My name is on the title. Actually, Robert said, avoiding eye contact, our names are on the title too. Remember, we co-signed for you because you didn't have enough credit history on your own. The memory hit me like a brick wall. When I'd bought the car 2 years ago, the dealer had required a co-signer because I was young and didn't have extensive credit. My parents had graciously offered to help, signing the paperwork alongside me. I remembered being so grateful, so proud that they believed in me enough to take that risk. I also remembered the dealer explaining that having co-signers meant all parties had equal legal rights to the vehicle. At the time, it seemed like a technicality. My parents weren't going to drive my car or make decisions about it. It was just paperwork to help me get approved. But it's still my car, I said, my voice rising. I made every payment. I paid for the insurance. I paid for the maintenance. Just because you co-signed doesn't mean you can sell it without telling me. We're sorry, Mija, Maria said, tears forming in her eyes. We didn't want to do this, but we had no choice. No choice? What are you talking about? No choice about what? Robert finally looked at me directly. Marcus is in trouble, big trouble. He owes some very dangerous people a lot of money, and they were threatening to hurt him if he didn't pay up immediately. The pieces started falling into place. The mysterious phone calls, the mood swings, the constant need for small amounts of cash. Gambling, I said. It wasn't a question. He got in over his head, Maria explained. Started small, but it escalated quickly. He owes them $15,000, and they gave him until yesterday to pay, or… She couldn't finish the sentence. Or they'd hurt him, Robert completed. These aren't the kind of people you mess around with, Lillian. They know where we live. They know where you work. Marcus showed us some photos they sent him. I felt sick. So you sold my car to pay his gambling debts? We got $12,000 for it, Robert said. We added $3,000 of our own savings to make up the difference. It was the only way to keep him safe. Where is Marcus now? He left town this morning, Maria said. He's going to stay with your cousin Diego in Phoenix until things cool down. I looked around the living room where I'd grown up, where we'd celebrated birthdays and holidays, where I'd felt safe and loved. Everything looked the same, but nothing would ever be the same again. You sold my car? I repeated, still trying to process it. Without asking me, without telling me. You just decided that Marcus's problems were more important than my property, my transportation, my ability to get to work? We'll help you get another car, Robert offered weakly. With what money? You just spent your savings on his debts, and now I don't have a car to get to work to earn money for another one. The reality of my situation was becoming clear. I had a client presentation in 2 hours that I couldn't get to. I had no way to commute to work. I had no savings left after helping with household expenses. And my family had made a major decision about my life without involving me at all. We thought it would be easier if we handled everything. We didn't want to put that burden on you. The burden of deciding what to do with my own car? The burden of knowing your brother might get hurt because we couldn't help him. I realized then that this wasn't really about the car. This was about years of Marcus being treated like the golden child who could do no wrong, while I was expected to be the responsible one who'd understand and sacrifice for the family. This was about my parents believing that Marcus's poor choices were somehow my responsibility to fix. I grabbed my phone and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" Maria called after me. "To figure out how to get to work without the car you sold." As I walked down the street toward the bus stop, my phone buzzing with calls from my parents, I realized this was just the beginning. Because while they might have been able to sell my car, they'd forgotten one crucial detail that was about to make their solution a lot more complicated than they'd planned. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. The bus ride to work gave me 45 minutes to think, and by the time I reached downtown Denver, I'd made several decisions. First, I was going to nail my client presentation despite everything. Second, I was going to find out exactly what legal options I had. And third, I was going to make sure my parents understood the full consequences of what they'd done. My presentation went better than expected. Sarah Chen, the marketing director for a local tech startup, loved my rebrand concepts and signed a 6-month contract on the spot. Under normal circumstances, I would have been ecstatic. Instead, I felt hollow. How was I supposed to maintain this level of work without reliable transportation? During my lunch break, I called my friend Jessica, who worked as a paralegal downtown. We'd known each other since college, and she'd always been the person I turned to when I needed practical advice. Jess, I need to ask you something about car ownership laws. Shoot, she said, and I could hear her typing in the background. I explained the situation, carefully laying out the facts about the co-signing, the sale, and my parents' reasoning. Jessica was quiet for a long moment after I finished. Lillian, this is more complicated than your parents probably realized. Yes, as co-signers, they technically have legal rights to the vehicle, but there are several problems with what they did. Like what? First, you were the primary owner and the one making all the payments. That establishes you as having the strongest claim to the vehicle. Second, they didn't notify you of their intention to sell, which could be considered conversion, basically theft, in some circumstances. Third, and this is the big one, you're still legally responsible for that car loan. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? The loan didn't disappear when they sold the car. You're still on the hook for the remaining balance, which I'm guessing is more than the $12,000 they got for it. I quickly did the math in my head. I'd been paying on the loan for 2 years, but I'd financed it for 6 years to keep the payments manageable. I probably still owed around $18,000. So let me get this straight, I said slowly. They sold my car for $12,000, I still owe $18,000 on the loan, and I no longer have a car to show for it? That's exactly right. And here's another fun fact. The loan company doesn't care who physically has the car. They're going to expect those monthly payments to continue coming from you. I felt like I was going to throw up. What can I do? Well, you've got a few options, but none of them are great. You could sue your parents for conversion and try to recover the value of the car. You could report the car as stolen since they took it without your permission, regardless of the co-signing situation. Or you could try to work something out with them privately. What would you do? Honestly, I'd be furious. Your parents put you in an impossible financial situation to bail out your brother's gambling problem. That's not okay, regardless of their intentions. After work, I took another bus ride home, this time to research car loan laws on my phone. Everything Jessica had told me was correct, and the situation was even worse than I'd initially thought. I found several cases similar to mine where people had successfully sued co-signers for unauthorized sale of vehicles, but the legal process was expensive and time-consuming. When I got home around 7, my parents were waiting in the kitchen. Robert had made his famous carne asada, and Maria had set the table with my favorite dishes. It was clearly a peace offering. "How was work, mija?" asked tentatively. "Fine, I got a new client." "That's wonderful," Robert said with forced enthusiasm. "See, everything's going to work out." I sat down at the table but didn't touch the food. I talked to a lawyer today. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "A lawyer?" Maria repeated. "Yes, about the car situation. Turns out it's more complicated than you thought." Robert set down his fork. "Lillian, we don't need lawyers getting involved in family business." "It stopped being just family business when you made me legally liable for a loan on a car I no longer possess." "What do you mean?" Maria asked. I pulled out my phone and showed them the loan website where my account information was displayed. I still owe $17,800 on that car loan. The monthly payments are still my responsibility. The insurance is still my responsibility. Except now, I don't have a car to drive or sell to pay off the loan. The color drained from Robert's face. But we sold it. The new owner can take over the loan." "That's not how it works, Dad. The loan is in my name. The new owner might have gotten a new loan to pay you the $12,000, but my original loan is still active." Maria started crying. "We didn't know. The dealer who bought it said he'd handle all the paperwork." "What dealer?" "Pete's pre-owned on Colfax. Your father found them online. They said they'd take care of everything." My heart sank further. Pete's pre-owned was a small, somewhat shady lot known for quick cash deals. They weren't the type of business to handle loan transfers properly. "Did you get any paperwork from them? Any documentation of the sale?" Robert nodded and went to their bedroom, returning with a thin folder. Inside was a basic bill of sale, handwritten, with barely any details. No VIN number, no odometer reading, no buyer's license information. Just 2019 Honda Civic, $12,000, and 2 signatures. "This isn't legal documentation," I said. "This looks like someone wrote on a napkin." "But they gave us the money," Maria protested. $12,000 in cash. "Which means this was probably an off-the-books transaction. They might have already sold the car to someone else, or parted it out, or shipped it overseas. There's no paper trail." The room went quiet, except for Maria's soft crying. "What does this mean for Marcus?" Robert asked. "Marcus got his debts paid and left town. This means I'm stuck with a car loan for a car that's probably been chopped up for parts, and no way to prove where it went." "We'll fix this," Robert said desperately. "We'll get the money back from the dealer." "With what leverage? You have a handwritten piece of paper and no legal grounds to demand anything. They'll probably claim they've never seen you before." I stood up from the table, the food still untouched. "Where are you going?" Maria asked. "To my room to figure out how to pay an $18,000 car loan while taking the bus to work." "Lillian, please, we're family. We'll work through this together." I turned to look at her. "When you decided to sell my car without asking me, did you consider me family then? When you chose to protect Marcus from the consequences of his choices by making those consequences my problem, did you think about family then?" "That's not fair," Robert said. "We were trying to protect everyone." "No, Dad. You were trying to protect Marcus. I was just collateral damage." I went to my room and closed the door, but I could hear them talking in hushed, urgent voices in the kitchen. Robert kept saying, "We have to fix this," while Maria cried and repeated, "What have we done?" Around 10 p.m., I heard a car pull into the driveway. Through my window, I watched a black SUV park where my Honda used to sit. A man in an expensive suit got out and walked to our front door. The doorbell rang, and I heard my father's footsteps in the hallway. There was a brief conversation I couldn't make out. Then Robert called out, "Lillian, can you come out here, please?" When I opened my bedroom door, I saw my parents standing in the living room with the man from the SUV. He was tall, well-dressed, and had the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Miss Hernandez," he said, extending his hand. "My name is Vincent Torres. I believe we need to talk." "About what?" "About your brother Marcus, and about a car that was sold without proper authorization." My parents exchanged terrified glances. "I'm sorry," I said carefully, "but I don't understand what this has to do with me." Vincent's smile widened. "Oh, I think you understand more than you're letting on. You see, the people Marcus owed money to, they don't consider his debt fully paid." "But we gave them $15,000, Robert said quickly. "You gave them $12,000, Vincent corrected. Plus interest and penalties for the delay, Marcus actually owed $22,000. The remaining $10,000 is still outstanding." Maria gasped. "But Marcus said it was $15,000. He showed us the papers." "Marcus showed you what he wanted you to see. Your son is a very creative young man when it comes to managing information." I felt the room spinning again. Not only had my parents sold my car based on incomplete information, but the problem wasn't even solved. "This still doesn't involve me," I said. Vincent pulled out his phone and showed me a photo. It was my Honda Civic sitting in what looked like a warehouse. "Actually, Miss Hernandez, it involves you quite a bit. You see, we were very interested to discover that the car your parents sold to pay Marcus's debt was never actually theirs to sell. Vincent Torres settled into our living room like he owned the place, adjusting his expensive suit jacket and placing his phone on the coffee table so we could all see the photo of my Honda Civic. "Here's what happened," he began, his tone conversational but with an underlying threat. "Your parents sold this car to Pete's pre-owned for $12,000 cash. Pete, being the opportunistic businessman he is, immediately contacted us because he knew we were looking for assets to recover Marcus's debt." "Looking for assets?" I repeated. "When someone owes us money and disappears, we start investigating their family's financial situation. Cars, houses, jewelry, anything of value that might help settle the account. Pete think he was being helpful by letting us know about a quick cash sale." Robert's face had gone completely pale. "Are you saying the car dealer was working with you?" "Not working with us, exactly. But Pete knows that cooperation with certain business interests can be profitable for him in the long run. He called us before he even finished the paperwork with you." Vincent picked up his phone and swiped to another photo, this one showing the interior of my car, with my gym bag still in the back seat and my parking pass from work hanging from the rearview mirror. "The problem is, when we ran the VIN number, we discovered this vehicle belongs to Lillian here, not to Marcus or his parents, which means your son essentially stole his sister's car to pay his debts." "That's not what happened," Maria said desperately. "We sold it. We're on the title." "Mrs. Hernandez, being a co-signer doesn't give you the right to sell someone else's property without their consent, especially when that person has been making all the payments and has primary ownership. What your family did is called fraudulent transfer, and it's a felony." I found my voice. "What do you want?" Vincent smiled that cold smile again. "What I want is very simple. I want the remaining $10,000 Marcus owes us, plus the inconvenience fee for having to track down a stolen vehicle, plus the storage fee for keeping said vehicle safe while we figured out who really owns it." "How much total?" Robert asked weakly. $15,000, cash, by tomorrow night." The number hung in the air like a death sentence. My parents had just spent their $3,000 in savings, plus the $12,000 from my car, to pay what they thought was Marcus's full debt. Now they were being asked for $15,000 more. "We don't have $15,000, Maria whispered. "Then you have a problem," Vincent said. "Because if this debt isn't settled, we keep the car permanently, and we start looking at other family assets to recover our money." "Other assets?" I asked. Vincent gestured around the living room. "Nice house, probably worth a couple $100,000 in this market. I'm sure you have equity built up over the years." Robert stood up abruptly. "You can't threaten our home over Marcus's gambling debts." "Mr. Hernandez, I'm not threatening anything. I'm explaining business realities. Your son entered into a financial agreement with us. When he couldn't pay, your family attempted to settle the debt using stolen property. That makes you accessories to fraud. We can handle this privately, or we can involve law enforcement and let them sort out who's guilty of what." The implication was clear. If the police got involved, my parents would be facing criminal charges for selling my car without permission, Marcus would be wanted for fraud, and I'd still be stuck with an $18,000 loan for a car I couldn't access. "What if I can prove the car is mine?" I asked. "What if I can show that I made every payment, that it was my primary vehicle, that my parents had no right to sell it?" "Then you'd be welcome to take that up in court. Of course, while you're spending months and thousands of dollars on lawyers, your car will remain in our possession. And Marcus will still owe us money, which means we'll still have business with your family." Vincent stood up and straightened his tie. "I'll give you 24 hours to decide how you want to handle this. You can pay the $15,000 and get the car back, or you can let this become a legal matter and see how that works out for everyone involved." He handed Robert a business card. "My number's on there. Call me tomorrow by 8 p.m. with your decision." After he left, the three of us sat in stunned silence for several minutes. Finally, Robert threw the business card across the room. "This is insane. We paid Marcus's debt, and now they want more money, and they're holding your car hostage?" "Dad, they're criminals. This is what criminals do. They don't operate by normal business rules." Maria was crying again. What are we going to do? We don't have $15,000. We don't even have $5,000. We could get a second mortgage on the house, Robert suggested half-heartedly. Are you serious right now? I stared at him in disbelief. You want to risk our family home to pay off Marcus's gambling debts? What choice do we have? We have lots of choices, Dad. We just don't like any of them. I went to my laptop and started researching Vincent Torres and the business he worked for. It didn't take long to find information. There were dozens of complaints filed with the Better Business Bureau, several news articles about predatory lending practices, and at least 3 ongoing FBI investigations into loan sharking operations in the Denver area. Mom, Dad, come look at this. They gathered around my laptop as I showed them what I'd found. Vincent Torres worked for a company called Rocky Mountain Financial Services, which was essentially a front for an illegal gambling and loan operation. The FBI had been building a case against them for over a year. These are not people you negotiate with, I explained. They're criminals under federal investigation. So what do we do? Maria asked. We call the FBI. Robert shook his head immediately. Absolutely not. If we get the authorities involved, Marcus will go to jail. Marcus should go to jail. He created this entire mess with his gambling addiction, then lied to us about how much he owed, and now we're all being threatened by organized crime because of his choices. He's still our son, Maria said quietly. And I'm still your daughter, but you sold my car without asking me, put me in financial ruin, and now you want to risk our home to protect the person who caused all of this? The argument that followed was the worst fight our family had ever had. Robert insisted that we couldn't involve law enforcement because it would destroy Marcus's future. Maria kept saying we needed to stick together as a family. I kept pointing out that Marcus had already made his choices, and the rest of us shouldn't have to suffer for them. Around midnight, I made my own choice. I called Jessica. Lillian, it's midnight. What's wrong? I told her everything about Vincent Torres, Rocky Mountain Financial Services, and the ultimatum we'd been given. Oh my God, she said when I finished. Lillian, you need to call the FBI immediately, like right now. My parents don't want to involve law enforcement. Your parents don't get to make that choice anymore. You're being extorted by criminals. This isn't about family dynamics. This is about organized crime. But what happens to Marcus? Marcus made his bed. He's an adult who chose to gamble money he didn't have, then chose to lie to his family about it, then chose to run away and leave you all to deal with the consequences. You don't owe him protection from those consequences. Jessica helped me find the contact information for the SBI's Financial Crimes Unit in Denver. Agent Sarah Mitchell answered on the second ring, despite the late hour. Agent Mitchell, this is going to sound crazy, but I think my family is being extorted by loan sharks, and I have evidence that might help with an ongoing investigation. Go on. I explained the situation from the beginning, Marcus's gambling debts, the sale of my car, Vincent Torres's visit, and the ultimatum. Agent Mitchell listened without interrupting. Miss Hernandez, you're absolutely right to call us. Rocky Mountain Financial Services is one of our active cases. Can you tell me exactly what Vincent Torres looked like? I described him in detail, and I could hear typing on the other end of the line. That matches our surveillance photos. You've potentially given us our first direct witness to their extortion tactics. But I need to be honest with you. If you decide to cooperate with our investigation, your brother Marcus will likely face federal charges for fraud and conspiracy. What kind of charges? Wire fraud for using gambling websites, conspiracy to commit fraud for involving your family and paying his debts with stolen property, and possibly racketeering if we can prove he was working with Rocky Mountain Financial Services to target your family's assets. I looked down the hallway toward my parents' bedroom, where I could hear them still talking in worried whispers. Agent Mitchell, if I don't cooperate, what happens? Best case scenario, your family pays the $15,000, gets your car back, and this organization leaves you alone. Worst case, they keep asking for more money until your family is bankrupt, and then they escalate to physical intimidation. And if I do cooperate? We arrest Vincent Torres and his associates, shut down their operation, recover your vehicle, and you testify in federal court. Your brother goes to prison, but your family is safe. I had until 8 p.m. the next day to decide, but as I hung up the phone, I realized I'd already made my choice. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my desk researching everything I could find about federal witness protection, RICO cases, and what happens to families when one member cooperates with law enforcement against organized crime. The reality was sobering. Even if the FBI successfully prosecuted Rocky Mountain Financial Services, there could be retaliation from other criminal organizations they were connected to. At 6 a.m., I heard my parents moving around in the kitchen. When I joined them, they looked like they'd aged 10 years overnight. Robert was staring blankly at his coffee, while Maria was mechanically making breakfast nobody would eat. "Did either of you sleep?" I asked. "Not really," Robert admitted. "We've been trying to figure out how to get $15,000 by tonight." "And?" "We could take a cash advance on our credit cards," Maria suggested weakly. "At what interest rate? 30%? You'd be paying that off for the rest of your lives." Robert pulled out his phone. "I called my brother Louis in Albuquerque. He said he might be able to lend us $5,000, but that's all he has." I watched my parents desperately scrambling to find money to pay criminals because they were terrified of the alternative. It broke my heart, but it also crystallized something for me. "Mom, Dad, we need to talk about Marcus." They both looked up sharply. "What about him?" Maria asked. "When did you last actually talk to him? Not just text messages or quick phone calls. When did you have a real conversation?" Robert frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean, when did Marcus last tell you the truth about anything important? His job situation, his living situation, his financial situation. When was he last honest with you?" Maria's face crumpled. "Lillian, don't." "Mom, he lied to you about how much he owed. He let you sell my car under false pretenses. He disappeared the second the money changed hands, leaving us to deal with the consequences. He's been lying to you for months, maybe years." "He's struggling," Robert said defensively. "People make mistakes when they're desperate." "This isn't a mistake, Dad. This is a pattern. Marcus has been manipulating both of you, using your love for him to avoid taking responsibility for his choices." I pulled up my phone and showed them screenshots I'd taken the night before. I found Marcus's social media accounts. "Look at these photos." The pictures were from the past 3 months. Marcus at expensive restaurants, Marcus wearing designer clothes, Marcus at a casino in Las Vegas just 2 weeks ago. In every photo, he looked happy, relaxed, and well-funded. "He wasn't struggling to find work," I continued. "He was gambling professionally. And not just with his own money. He was using money he borrowed from dangerous people, money he never intended to pay back himself." Maria's face crumpled. "Lillian, don't." "Mom, he lied to you about how much he owed. He let you sell my car under false pretenses. He disappeared the second the money changed hands, leaving us to deal with the consequences. He's been lying to you for months, maybe years." "He's struggling," Robert said defensively. "People make mistakes when they're desperate." "This isn't a mistake, Dad. This is a pattern. Marcus has been manipulating both of you, using your love for him to avoid taking responsibility for his choices." I pulled up my phone and showed them screenshots I'd taken the night before. I found Marcus's social media accounts. "Look at these photos." The pictures were from the past 3 months. Marcus at expensive restaurants, Marcus wearing designer clothes, Marcus at a casino in Las Vegas just 2 weeks ago. In every photo, he looked happy, relaxed, and well-funded. "He wasn't struggling to find work," I continued. "He was gambling professionally. And not just with his own money. He was using money he borrowed from dangerous people, money he never intended to pay back himself." Maria's face crumpled. "Lillian, don't." "Mom, he lied to you about how much he owed. He let you sell my car under false pretenses. He disappeared the second the money changed hands, leaving us to deal with the consequences. He's been lying to you for months, maybe years." "He's struggling," Robert said defensively. "People make mistakes when they're desperate." "This isn't a mistake, Dad. This is a pattern. Marcus has been manipulating both of you, using your love for him to avoid taking responsibility for his choices." I pulled up my phone and showed them screenshots I'd taken the night before. I found Marcus's social media accounts. "Look at these photos." The pictures were from the past 3 months. Marcus at expensive restaurants, Marcus wearing designer clothes, Marcus at a casino in Las Vegas just 2 weeks ago. In every photo, he looked happy, relaxed, and well-funded. He wasn't struggling to find work, I continued. He was gambling professionally, and not just with his own money. He was using money he borrowed from dangerous people, money he never intended to pay back himself. Maria's face crumpled. But he told us he was looking for jobs. He said he was networking. He was networking with bookies and loan sharks. Look at the dates on these posts, Mom. 3 days ago, he was at a high-stakes poker game in Phoenix. While you were selling my car to save his life, he was gambling with more money. The silence that followed was deafening. I watched my parents process the reality that their son had been lying to them about everything, had manipulated them into sacrificing my future for his addiction, and was probably still gambling with the money they'd raised to pay his debts. Finally, Robert spoke. Even if that's true, he's still in danger. Vincent Torres and his people don't care about Marcus's lives. They just want their money. Dad, Marcus isn't in danger anymore. We are. He's in Phoenix, probably gambling away the money you gave him right now. We're the ones with a criminal organization making threats against our family home. My phone rang. Agent Mitchell. Miss Hernandez, I hope I'm not calling too early. We've had some developments overnight that I think you should know about. What kind of developments? We've been monitoring Rocky Mountain Financial Services' communications since our conversation last night. Vincent Torres made several phone calls after leaving your house, and we have recordings. Recordings of what? Him discussing your family situation with his associates. It turns out they never had any intention of returning your car, regardless of whether you pay the $15,000. They're planning to keep demanding more money until they can force your parents to sign over the deed to your house. I put the phone on speaker so my parents could hear. Agent Mitchell, this is Lillian's father. Are you saying they're planning to take our home no matter what we do? Mr. Hernandez, that's exactly what I'm saying. This organization doesn't just collect debts. They systematically target middle-class families and use debt as leverage to steal property. Your son's gambling problem was just the entry point. Maria sank into her chair. So if we pay $15,000, they'll invent new charges. Storage fees, interest penalties, administrative costs. They'll keep escalating until you're forced to choose between bankruptcy and signing over your house. But if we don't pay, Robert asked, they'll report the car as stolen, have you arrested for fraud, and then approach you in jail with an offer to make the charges disappear in exchange for the house deed. I felt sick. How many families have they done this to? At least 12 that we know of. We have victims who lost their homes, their businesses, their entire life savings. And in every case, it started with a family member who had gambling debts. The room went quiet, except for Maria's quiet crying. Agent Mitchell, I said, what do you need from us to stop them? We need you to wear a wire tonight when Vincent Torres comes for his answer. We need to record him making the extortion demands. With that evidence, we can arrest him and his associates, seize their assets, and shut down the entire operation. What about the car? Robert asked. If you cooperate with us, we'll recover your daughter's vehicle as part of the asset seizure. You'll get it back, and the loan will be handled as part of the restitution process. And Marcus, Maria whispered. Mrs. Hernandez, I won't lie to you. Your son will face federal charges. But if he cooperates with our investigation, we might be able to work out a plea agreement that involves treatment for his gambling addiction instead of significant prison time. I looked at my parents. Robert was staring at his hands, while Maria continued crying silently. There's something else you should know, Agent Mitchell continued. We've been investigating your son's activities, and we believe he's been working as a recruiter for this organization. A recruiter? I asked. He identifies potential victims, people with good credit, stable homes, family members who might be willing to help with debts. He befriends them, gets them gambling, gets them in debt, then introduces them to Rocky Mountain Financial Services. That's impossible, Robert said. Marcus wouldn't do that to other people. Sir, we have evidence that your son has recruited at least 6 other victims over the past year. He gets a percentage of whatever the organization ultimately recovers from each family. The world tilted sideways. Marcus wasn't just a victim of his own gambling addiction. He was actively working with criminals to destroy other families. How much does he get paid? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. 10% of recovered assets. Based on our calculations, your brother has made approximately $40,000 in the past year from recruiting activities. Maria made a sound like she'd been punched in the stomach. $40,000? While pretending to be broke and living off your charity, I added. The scope of Marcus's betrayal was staggering. Miss Hernandez, Agent Mitchell said, we understand this is a lot to process, but we need an answer soon. Vincent Torres is expecting contact from your family by 8 p.m. If you're willing to help us, we need to set up the recording equipment before he arrives. I looked at my parents one more time. Robert was crying now, too, probably for the first time since I was a child. Maria was staring at the photos on my phone, at her son's smiling face in expensive clothes, finally understanding how thoroughly he'd manipulated them. Agent Mitchell, I said, we'll do it. Are you sure? She asked. I thought about my car loan, my ruined credit, my inability to get to work. I thought about my parents' retirement savings, gone to pay debts for a son who was earning money by destroying other families. I thought about the 12 other families who had already lost everything to this organization. I'm sure, I said, but I have one condition. What's that? I want to be the one wearing the wire when Vincent Torres shows up tonight. At 3 p.m., Agent Mitchell arrived at our house with a technical specialist named Agent Rodriguez. They transformed our living room into a staging area, with surveillance equipment hidden throughout and a backup team positioned in unmarked vehicles down the street. The wire itself was smaller than I'd expected, a tiny device that attached under my shirt with medical tape. Agent Rodriguez tested it multiple times, having me walk to different parts of the house while she monitored the audio quality from a van parked 2 blocks away. Remember, Agent Mitchell coached me, we need Vincent to clearly state the extortion demands on tape. Get him to specify the amount, the timeline, and what happens if you don't pay. If he mentions taking your house or other threats, that's perfect. My parents sat quietly on the couch, looking shell-shocked. The weight of Marcus's betrayal had broken something fundamental in their worldview. The son they'd protected and sacrificed for had been systematically destroying other families for profit. What happens after tonight? Robert asked. If everything goes according to plan, we arrest Vincent Torres and his associates immediately after they leave your house. Within 24 hours, we'll execute search warrants on Rocky Mountain Financial Services and recover assets they've stolen from victims, including Lillian's car. And Marcus? Agent Mitchell's expression softened slightly. Mr. Hernandez, we'll issue a federal warrant for your son's arrest. He'll likely be taken into custody in Phoenix within the next few days. However, if he cooperates fully with our investigation, we may be able to negotiate a reduced sentence that focuses on rehabilitation rather than punishment. At 7:30 p.m., my phone rang. Vincent Torres. Miss Hernandez, I trust you've had time to consider our discussion yesterday. I activated the recording app on my phone as a backup to the wire. Yes, we've been discussing it. And what decision has your family reached? We'd like to meet in person to discuss the terms. There are no terms to discuss. $15,000 cash by 8 p.m. tonight, or we keep the car and begin pursuing other assets. Other assets? Your family's house, Miss Hernandez. We have an appraisal showing it's worth approximately $280,000. That would more than cover your brother's outstanding debts and associated costs. Perfect. Agent Mitchell had been right. Vincent couldn't help but reveal their true intentions. We'll have the money ready when you arrive, I said. Excellent. I'll be there at 8 p.m. sharp. After he hung up, Agent Rodriguez confirmed that both the wire and phone recording had captured the conversation clearly. That was perfect, Lillian. He just confessed to extortion and threatened to steal your house on a federal wiretap. The next 20 minutes felt like hours. My parents barely spoke, just held hands on the couch and waited. Agent Mitchell reviewed the plan one more time. I would invite Vincent inside, let him make his demands, then signal the backup team by mentioning that I needed to get some fresh air. At exactly 8 p.m., the black SUV pulled into our driveway. Vincent Torres stepped out wearing the same expensive suit, carrying a leather briefcase. He walked to our door with the confidence of a man who'd done this dozens of times before. I opened the door before he could knock. Mr. Torres, please, come in. He entered our living room and immediately assessed the space, his eyes moving over every detail. For a terrifying moment, I wondered if he could somehow detect the surveillance equipment. "Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. Hernandez," he said, with that cold smile. "I trust you have good news for me." Robert cleared his throat. "We've been able to gather some money, but not the full $15,000. Vincent's smile disappeared. "How much?" $8,000, Maria said quietly. "It's everything we could manage between credit cards and borrowing from family." $8,000. Vincent opened his briefcase and pulled out a tablet, typing something quickly. "With the delay penalty for not meeting our original deadline, your outstanding balance is now $18,000. "Delay penalty?" I asked. "Miss Hernandez, time is money in this business. Every day your brother's debt remains unpaid, it accumulates additional costs. Interest, storage fees for your vehicle, administrative overhead, it all adds up." He turned the tablet around to show us a detailed spreadsheet. "As you can see, the total amount now owed is $18,437. Your $8,000 payment would reduce that to $10,437. And then what? Then you'd have another 24 hours to pay the remaining balance." "What if we can't?" Vincent's smile returned. "Well, that's where things get interesting. We've done some research on your family's financial situation. You have significant equity in this property. We could arrange for a lien to be placed against the house, which would allow you to pay off your brother's debt over time." "A lien?" Robert asked. "Think of it as a second mortgage, Mr. Hernandez. You'd make monthly payments to us instead of a bank. Very reasonable terms, only 25% annual interest." Agent Mitchell had been right about everything. They were systematically trapping families in impossible debt cycles designed to steal their homes. "What happens if we can't make those monthly payments?" I pressed. "Then we'd be forced to foreclose on the line and take possession of the property. But I'm sure it won't come to that. You seem like responsible people." Vincent closed his briefcase and stood up. "I'll need your answer right now. $8,000 cash to reduce the balance, plus agreement to the lien arrangement for the remainder, or we proceed with asset recovery through other means." "Other means?" "Legal channels, Miss Hernandez. We file theft charges for the unauthorized sale of our collateral, then pursue civil action for the full amount plus damages. That could easily reach $40,000 or $50,000 in legal fees and penalties." This was it. He'd just threatened us with fraudulent legal action while demanding our house as collateral. Everything was on tape. "I need a moment to think," I said. "This is a lot to process. Maybe I should get some fresh air to clear my head." Agent Mitchell had told me that was the signal, but Vincent held up his hand. "Miss Hernandez, there's no time for thinking. I need your decision now, or I'm leaving, and you'll be dealing with our legal department tomorrow morning." "Actually," I said, looking him directly in the eyes, "I think we'll be dealing with someone else entirely." His expression shifted instantly. "What do you mean?" "I mean, the FBI has been listening to every word you've said tonight." Vincent's face went white. He reached inside his jacket, but before he could pull out whatever he was going for, our front door burst open and Agent Mitchell entered with 3 other federal agents, all with weapons drawn. "Vincent Torres, you're under arrest for extortion, racketeering, and conspiracy to commit fraud." The next few minutes were chaotic. Vincent was handcuffed and read his rights, while agents searched his briefcase and vehicle. Agent Rodriguez confirmed that they'd recorded everything clearly, including the threats about the house and the admission of other illegal activities. As they loaded Vincent into a federal transport vehicle, Agent Mitchell approached us. "You did perfectly, Lillian. This recording will be crucial evidence in dismantling their entire organization." "What happens now?" Maria asked. "Now we execute search warrants on Rocky Mountain Financial Services and arrest the other members of this operation. We'll recover your daughter's car and all other assets they've stolen, and we'll begin the process of charging your son Marcus as a co-conspirator." 2 days later, I got a call from the FBI impound lot. My Honda Civic was ready for pickup, completely undamaged. The loan had been transferred to the Federal Restitution Fund, meaning I was no longer responsible for the payments. Marcus was arrested in Phoenix that same day. When Agent Mitchell called to update us, she mentioned that he'd been living in a luxury apartment and had over $30,000 in cash hidden in his bedroom, money he'd earned from recruiting other victims. The hardest part was visiting him in federal detention. He looked different, smaller, older, like the facade he'd been maintaining for months had finally collapsed. "Lillian, I'm sorry," he said through the glass partition. "I never meant for things to go this far." "When did it start, Marcus? When did you first decide that destroying other families was worth the money?" He couldn't look at me. "It wasn't supposed to be like that. I was just supposed to find people who liked to gamble. I didn't know they were going to lose their homes." "Yes, you did. You watched it happen to at least 12 families, and you kept doing it because they paid you well." "I had debts of my own. I was desperate." "You had parents who would have helped you. You had a sister who would have helped you. Instead, you chose to prey on other desperate people." Marcus finally looked up at me. "Are Mom and Dad okay?" "They're devastated. You spent years lying to them, stealing from them, putting them in danger, and manipulating their love for you. They'll probably never trust the same way again." "Will they forgive me?" I stood up to leave. "That's not up to me, Marcus. But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. You're going to prison, and 12 families lost everything because of choices you made. Whether Mom and Dad forgive you or not, you'll have to live with that." 6 months later, Vincent Torres and 14 associates were sentenced to federal prison terms ranging from 8 to 25 years. Rocky Mountain Financial Services was shut down permanently, and over $2 million in stolen assets were returned to victims. Marcus pleaded guilty and received a 5-year sentence with the possibility of parole in 3 years if he completed a gambling addiction treatment program. My parents visit him once a month, but our family will never be the same. I kept my Honda Civic for another year before trading it in for something newer. Every time I looked at it, I remembered the night I wore a wire to catch criminals, the night I learned that sometimes protecting your family means protecting them from each other. The most important lesson I learned wasn't about cars or money or even family loyalty. It was that love without boundaries isn't really love at all. It's enablement. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to participate in someone else's destructive choices, even when that someone is your own brother. 3 weeks after Vincent Torres's arrest, I thought the nightmare was over. The FBI had recovered my car, the criminal organization was dismantled, and Marcus was awaiting trial in federal detention. My parents and I were slowly beginning to rebuild our relationship, though the trust issues ran deep. Then I received a phone call that changed everything again. "Miss Hernandez, this is Detective Karen Walsh with the Denver Police Department. We need to speak with you about some additional charges related to your brother's Marcus's case." My heart sank. "What kind of additional charges?" "Can you come down to the station this afternoon? There are some things we need to discuss in person." When I arrived at the police station, Detective Walsh led me to a small conference room where Agent Mitchell was already waiting. The serious expressions on both their faces told me this wasn't going to be good news. "Lillian, we've uncovered something during our investigation of Rocky Mountain Financial Services that directly involves you," Agent Mitchell began. "Involves me how?" Detective Walsh opened a thick file folder. "Your brother Marcus didn't just recruit random strangers for the gambling operation, he specifically targeted people connected to his own family." She pulled out surveillance photos showing Marcus with people I recognized, my coworkers, neighbors, even some of my college friends. "That's Jake from my office," I said, pointing to one photo. "And that's my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson's son. What was Marcus doing with them?" "He was recruiting them," Agent Mitchell explained. "Marcus used information about your life, your job, your social connections to identify potential victims who would trust him because of his connection to you." The room started spinning. "Are you saying Marcus was using me to find people to scam?" "More than that, he was specifically targeting people who cared about you because he knew they'd be more likely to trust him and less likely to report him if things went wrong." Detective Walsh pulled out more documents. "Jake Morrison from your office, Marcus befriended him at a bar near your workplace, got him into high-stakes poker games. Jake lost $8,000 before he realized he was in over his head." $8,000? I felt sick. Jake never said anything to me. "Because Marcus told him not to, said it would hurt your relationship if Jake admitted he'd been gambling with your brother." Agent Mitchell opened her laptop and showed me a recording. This is from a wiretap we had on Marcus's phone before his arrest. Marcus's voice filled the room. Look, Jake, I know this is awkward because of Lillian, but that's exactly why I'm trying to help you out here. These guys I owe money to, they don't care about family connections. If you can't pay what you owe from the poker games, they're going to start looking at your assets, your car, your apartment, maybe even start bothering Lillian at work. My hands started shaking. He was threatening my coworkers using my name? It gets worse, Detective Walsh said. Mrs. Patterson's son David lost his entire college fund, $15,000. Marcus convinced him that Lillian Hernandez's little brother was a safe person to gamble with, someone who would protect him if things went bad. She showed me more recordings, more photos, more evidence of Marcus systematically exploiting my relationships to find victims. He'd approached at least 8 people I knew personally, using my reputation and their trust in me to lure them into gambling debts. The total amount stolen from people in your social circle is over $60,000, and in every case, Marcus used your name and reputation as collateral to convince them to trust him. I stared at the evidence spread across the table. These people lost money because they trusted me, because they thought Marcus was safe because he was my brother. Lillian, this wasn't your fault, Detective Walsh said gently. Wasn't it? My coworkers, my neighbors, my friends, they're all out thousands of dollars because they trusted someone connected to me. How is that not my fault? Agent Mitchell leaned forward. Because you had no idea what Marcus was doing. You were as much a victim of his manipulation as anyone else. But now what? Jake lost $8,000 he probably doesn't have. Mrs. Patterson's son lost his college fund. How do I face these people knowing that my brother destroyed their financial lives? Detective Walsh pulled out another document. Actually, there's something else we need to discuss. The Federal Restitution Fund will cover most of the losses from Rocky Mountain Financial Services victims. But the people Marcus targeted through your connections, they weren't technically part of the main criminal organization. My heart sank further. So they won't get their money back? Not through the federal case, no. Their losses were from illegal gambling operations that Marcus ran independently before he started working directly with Rocky Mountain Financial Services. How much money are we talking about? Agent Mitchell consulted her notes. $63,000 across 8 victims, plus interest and damages, it could reach close to $100,000. I sat in stunned silence. My brother had not only betrayed our family, he'd systematically destroyed the financial lives of innocent people who trusted me, and now there was no legal mechanism to compensate them. What are my options? I asked finally. Legally, nothing. You have no obligation to compensate victims of your brother's crimes, Detective Walsh explained. But morally, that's something you'll have to decide for yourself. When I got home that evening, I found my parents in the kitchen, looking through Marcus's belongings that the FBI had returned after processing them for evidence. Photo albums, childhood memorabilia, school awards, reminders of who we'd thought Marcus was before we learned who he'd really become. How did the meeting go? Robert asked. I sat down and told them everything. About Jake, about Mrs. Patterson's son David, about the 8 people Marcus had targeted specifically because of their connection to me, about the $63,000 in losses that would never be recovered through official channels. Maria started crying again. Those poor people, they trusted him because of us. They trusted him because of me, I corrected. Marcus used my relationships, my reputation, my workplace, my neighborhood. He turned my entire life into a hunting ground for victims. Robert looked older than I'd ever seen him. What do we do? I don't know, Dad. Legally, we don't have to do anything. But these are people I see every day. Jake sits 3 desks away from me at work. Mrs. Patterson waves to me every morning when I leave for the office. David Patterson used to mow our lawn when he was in high school. We could try to help them, Maria suggested quietly. With what money, Mom? We already lost our savings bailing Marcus out the first time. The house is our only major asset, and we can't mortgage it to pay off Marcus's victims. Actually, Robert said slowly, we could. I stared at him. Dad, no, we are not risking the family home to clean up Marcus's mess. We've already been through this. It's different now, Lillian. This isn't about protecting Marcus from consequences. This is about protecting innocent people from harm he caused using our family's reputation. These aren't our debts to pay. Maybe not legally, Maria said, but morally? These people trusted Marcus because they trusted us. Jake probably would never have gone to those poker games if Marcus hadn't been your brother. Mrs. Patterson's son wouldn't have gambled his college fund with a stranger. I wanted to argue with them, but deep down I knew they were right. Marcus had weaponized our family relationships, turning my parents' love and my professional reputation into tools for exploitation. Over the next week, I did something I'd never thought I'd do. I started reaching out to Marcus's victims. The conversation with Jake was the hardest. We met for coffee after work, and I could see the shame in his eyes before I even started talking. Jake, I know what Marcus did to you. His face went red. Lillian, I'm so sorry. I never should have gotten involved with gambling. I know it makes me look terrible, especially since he's your brother. You don't owe me an apology. I owe you one. Marcus used my name and our work relationship to manipulate you into trusting him. It's not your fault. Maybe not directly, but I feel responsible anyway. You lost $8,000 because someone you associated with me convinced you it was safe to gamble money you couldn't afford to lose. Jake was quiet for a long moment. I've been taking extra freelance work to try to pay off the credit cards I used to cover the loss. Working weekends, nights, my girlfriend almost left me because I couldn't tell her why we suddenly had no money for rent. What if there was a way to help you recover that money? Lillian, no, I'm not your responsibility. I made the choice to gamble. But you made that choice based on lies Marcus told you, lies that specifically used my reputation as collateral for his promises. I had similar conversations with David Patterson, with my college friend Sarah, who'd lost $4,000, with a guy named Tony who worked at the coffee shop I frequented and had lost his entire emergency fund. Every conversation reinforced the same horrible truth. Marcus hadn't just stolen money from these people. He'd stolen their trust, their security, their futures. And he'd done it by exploiting their relationship with me. After talking to all 8 victims, I called a family meeting. I've spoken with everyone Marcus targeted through our connections, I announced. The total losses are actually higher than the FBI calculated. It's $71,000. My parents sat in stunned silence. I've made a decision, I continued. I'm going to find a way to compensate these people. Lillian, that's noble, but we don't have $71,000, Robert said. No, but we have equity in this house, and I have my career, my future earning potential. I can get a loan. Absolutely not, Maria said firmly. You're not going to destroy your financial future to pay for Marcus's crimes. Mom, my coworker can't afford his rent because of the money he lost trusting Marcus. Mrs. Patterson's son can't go to college because his savings are gone. These aren't abstract victims. These are people whose lives Marcus ruined using my name. But it's not fair to you, Robert protested. None of this is fair to anyone. But I can't look these people in the eye every day, knowing they're struggling financially because my brother used their trust in me as a weapon against them. What I didn't tell my parents was that I'd already made an appointment with a financial advisor to explore my options. I'd already started researching second mortgage options, personal loans, and debt consolidation strategies. Because I'd realized something important during those conversations with Marcus's victims. My brother had stolen more than just money from these people. He'd stolen their ability to trust, their sense of security, their faith in other people's basic decency. And while I couldn't give those things back, I could at least give them back their financial stability. I could prove that not everyone in my family was willing to let innocent people suffer for one person's selfish choices. The question wasn't whether I could afford to help Marcus's victims. The question was whether I could afford not to. The financial advisor's office felt sterile and intimidating as I sat across from Margaret Foster, a woman in her 50s who specialized in debt consolidation and personal loans. I'd brought every piece of financial documentation I could find: pay stubs, tax returns, bank statements, credit reports. Miss Hernandez, Margaret said after reviewing my paperwork, I have to ask, why are you looking to take on $71,000 in debt for losses you had no involvement in creating? I'd rehearsed this answer, but it still felt inadequate. Because innocent people lost money trusting someone connected to me. Because I have to work with these people, live near them, and face them every day knowing they're struggling because of my family's actions. Margaret nodded slowly. I understand the moral motivation, but let's talk about the financial reality. Your annual salary is $62,000. After taxes and your current living expenses, you have very little margin for additional debt service. She turned her computer screen toward me, showing various loan scenarios. A $71,000 personal loan at current interest rates would require payments of approximately $1,400 per month for 7 years. That's nearly 40% of your take-home pay. The number hit me like a physical blow. $1,400 a month? Personal loans for this amount carry high interest rates because there's no collateral. If you defaulted, the lender would have no way to recover their money except through wage garnishment or bankruptcy proceedings. What about using my parents' house as collateral? A home equity loan would bring the monthly payments down to around $800, but it would put your family's residence at risk. If you couldn't make payments, they could lose their home. I stared at the numbers on her screen, feeling overwhelmed. Either option would essentially make me financially insolvent for the next 7 years, and the home equity option could destroy my parents' security. There is another possibility, Margaret continued. You could structure this as multiple smaller loans to individual victims, spreading the risk and potentially getting better terms. What do you mean? Instead of taking one large loan, you could work with each victim individually. Some might accept partial repayment plans, others might be willing to settle for less than the full amount if they knew they were getting something rather than nothing. This gave me an idea. What if I approached this differently? What if I tried to get Marcus to contribute to the restitution? Margaret raised an eyebrow. Your brother is facing federal prison time. How would he contribute? He earned over $40,000 working for the criminal organization. That money is sitting in federal asset forfeiture accounts. Maybe there's a way to redirect some of it toward his other victims. When I left Margaret's office, I had a plan, but it was complicated. I would need to convince the federal prosecutors to modify Marcus's plea agreement to include restitution for his individual victims. I would need to negotiate with each victim individually to determine what they could accept. And I would need to figure out how much of my own money I could realistically contribute without destroying my future. The first step was calling Agent Mitchell.
Lillian, I admire what you're trying to do, but federal asset forfeiture doesn't work that way. The money Marcus earned from Rocky Mountain Financial Services can only be used to compensate their official victims. But what about his personal assets? The $30,000 you found in his apartment? That's different. Personal assets can potentially be used for broader restitution, but it would require Marcus to agree to it as part of his plea negotiations. Would you be willing to arrange a meeting? Agent Mitchell was quiet for a moment. Are you sure you want to do this? Seeing Marcus again won't be easy, and there's no guarantee he'll cooperate. I have to try. These people deserve to know that someone in our family is willing to fight for them. The federal detention center was even more depressing than I remembered. Marcus looked terrible, thin, pale, and defeated. When he saw me through the security glass, his expression was a mixture of shame and desperate hope. Lillian, I wasn't sure you'd come back. I'm not here for you, Marcus. I'm here for the people you victimized using my name. His face fell. What do you mean? I pulled out photos of Jake, David Patterson, Sarah, and the others. These people lost over $70,000 because they trusted you, and they trusted you because they trusted me. Marcus stared at the photos. I never meant for it to happen like that. Yes, you did. You specifically targeted people who knew me because you knew they'd be more likely to trust you and less likely to report you if things went wrong. Lillian, I was desperate. I owed money to dangerous people. Stop. Just stop with the excuses. You made choices, Marcus. You chose to use my reputation to manipulate innocent people. You chose to destroy their lives for money. I leaned forward in my chair. But you can make a different choice now. What do you mean? The FBI found $30,000 in your apartment, money you earned from recruiting victims. I want you to agree to use that money to compensate the people you targeted through me. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. What's in it for me? The question made me want to scream. Even now, facing prison time, he was still calculating what personal advantage he could gain. What's in it for you? Is the possibility that someday, years from now, you might be able to look at yourself in the mirror without complete self-hatred. Will it help with my sentence? Maybe. The prosecutors might look more favorably on genuine attempts to make amends. But that's not why you should do it. Then why should I? I stood up to leave. Because Jake Morrison is working 3 jobs to pay off the credit cards he maxed out covering your gambling losses. Because David Patterson had to drop out of college because you stole his tuition money. Because 8 people who never hurt anyone are suffering because you used my name to manipulate them. Lillian, wait. Marcus pressed his hand against the glass. If I agree to this, will you visit me again? Will you try to convince Mom and Dad to forgive me? I looked at my brother, really looked at him. Even now, he was trying to manipulate the situation to his advantage. Even facing the consequences of destroying multiple lives, he was still thinking primarily about what he could get for himself. Marcus, I'll make you a deal. You sign over every penny of that $30,000 to a victim's compensation fund, with no strings attached and no expectation of anything in return. If you can do that, if you can make one genuinely selfless choice, then maybe there's still something worth saving in you. And if I don't, then this is the last conversation we'll ever have. 2 weeks later, Agent Mitchell called with good news. Marcus had agreed to surrender his personal assets for victim compensation. It wasn't enough to cover everyone's losses completely, but it was a start. With the $30,000 from Marcus's assets, I was able to create a more manageable plan. Instead of taking on $71,000 in debt, I only needed to cover $41,000. By negotiating payment plans with each victim and using a combination of a smaller personal loan and careful budgeting, I was able to make it work. Jake Morrison cried when I handed him a check for his full $8,000. Lillian, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Just know that not everyone in my family thinks it's okay to hurt innocent people. David Patterson was able to re-enroll in college for the spring semester. Mrs. Patterson hugged me so tightly I thought she might break my ribs. You didn't have to do this, Mija. Yes, I did. Your son trusted my family, and we betrayed that trust. This doesn't fix everything, but it's a start. The process of compensating all 8 victims took nearly 6 months. It meant living on rice and beans, taking the bus instead of driving, working freelance projects every weekend, and giving up any kind of social life. But every time I handed someone a check, every time I saw the relief in their eyes, I knew I'd made the right choice. Marcus pleaded guilty to federal conspiracy charges and was sentenced to 5 years in prison. The judge noted his cooperation in victim compensation as a mitigating factor, but emphasized that his crimes had caused immeasurable harm to innocent families. My parents visit him occasionally, but the relationship will never be the same. They've started going to therapy, both individually and together, to process the betrayal and figure out how to rebuild their lives. As for me, I learned that family loyalty doesn't mean protecting people from the consequences of their actions. It means holding them accountable while still loving them. It means making sure their victims don't become your victims too. A year later, I was promoted to senior graphic designer with a salary increase that finally made my loan payments manageable. Jake Morrison and I became close friends, bonded by shared experience and mutual respect. Mrs. Patterson still waves to me every morning, but now it's with genuine warmth instead of polite neighborliness. The Honda Civic I thought so hard to keep, I eventually sold it and bought a used truck. I needed the space for all the freelance equipment I'd acquired working extra jobs to pay off Marcus's debts. But every time I drive that truck, I remember the night I wore a wire to catch criminals. I remember the moment I realized that sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who share your last name. And I remember that courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about doing the right thing even when you're terrified of the cost. Marcus still writes me letters from prison. I haven't answered any of them yet. Maybe someday I will. But for now, I'm focused on rebuilding the trust he destroyed and proving that not everyone named Hernandez thinks other people's pain is acceptable collateral damage for their own mistakes. Some stories don't have happy endings, but they can have meaningful ones. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.